Welcome to Ecobite! My name is Sunny Fleming. I am Esri's Industry Specialist for Environment and Conservation for state and local government. I read the infrastructure bill, so you don't have to. You want to know what it's all about? All right, let me get into it. Why did I do this? Well, I would say the root of it is that I have issues with authority and therefore I question everything, and I just felt the need to really read it myself and understand what it is. So here's my 2 cents on what the infrastructure bill is and what it means for environmental professionals. I believe that the infrastructure bill is the White House masterclass in messaging. What is the messaging of the infrastructure bill? Considering that it is 98% existing programs that this funding is coming through, what's the big deal? Well, as I'm reading through the infrastructure bill, it keeps adding all of this language in there about resiliency, sustainability, and equity. So what it says to me is that good job, America. Keep doing what you're doing. You're always going to build bridges, you're always going to be repairing roads, and we're always going to continue living. But we need to do this with more sensitivity to the environment and more sensitivity to our people, all people. So what does this mean for environmental professionals? Well, I believe the environmental professionals are in more demand than ever. Applied environmental knowledge is now something that is in high demand across all industries. So for our environmental agencies that carry out the permitting processes, all of this funding coming down the pipeline means that there's going to be more environmental review. Now, if you have any inefficiencies in your existing operational processes, that means that they are going to be exploited and in a bad way. So what a lot of environmental agencies are looking to do right now is modernize their operations and streamline those permitting processes. This is holistic. This requires location technology from all aspects of the permitting process, from field operations to working with your stakeholders, public hearings, transparency, everything in between, and moving that data around inside your agency. So the things that I suggest environmental agencies do right now is take a look at your existing business systems and understand how they work together or how they don't work together, and identify those areas where you can improve those processes, especially using location technology, which environmental agencies already own. For everyday people, this infrastructure bill, also coupled with the Inflation Reduction Act, so they kind of do 2 different things. The infrastructure bill authorized a significant amount of funding to existing conservation programs. And I use that word conservation program kind of broadly, environmental and conservation programs. Whereas the Inflation Reduction Act provided a lot of different tax incentives. So they are seeking to tackle this issue of environment, equity, sustainability, and resiliency from those 2 different angles. So both incentives as well as infusing cash into existing programs. Now, what is going on, and there's this particular administration has a lot of leadership from local governments in it. And so they are really catering to local governments here, trying to reach out to communities that may not have been able to take advantage of these funds in the past. And there's a lot of reasons for that. To write a grant is a very lengthy and complicated process. And it's also a question of transparency and awareness of where this funding is coming from and how to access it, which is where that equitability question comes in. It's a really difficult challenge, but local communities right now have a lot of opportunity to get federal funding directly to them. Additionally, there are a lot of existing programs that are administered by state governments that are going to provide local communities as well as nonprofits and a lot of different industries with opportunities to really achieve these goals that we're looking to achieve with this bill, which is that environmental sensitivity, sustainability, resiliency, and equity. We cannot forget that one. So for the everyday person, in some ways, there's going to be very direct tax incentives. So things like appliances and stuff like that, you may want to kind of look into. I think they're still kind of figuring out how that gets administered. But then at the local level, I really think and would encourage individuals to become involved in their local governments, because I think there's going to be a lot of opportunity to take advantage of programs and to go to something like grants.gov and start searching for these things and really figuring it out. A lot of these programs have mechanisms now built in, either new language through the infrastructure bill or the IRA, or existing language that allows some of that funding to be used for technical assistance, which means grant writing. So there's a lot of opportunity that we can look at in these bills if we just kind of seek out the language. And I think the federal government, the impression I get is that they are trying to make it easier for communities to find these resources and gain access to them. At Esri, the three things I really focus on, or how I kind of group my domains, are by environmental regulation. That's one bucket. The second bucket is land and wildlife management, and that third bucket is outdoor recreation. So there's a lot of overlap in between, but generally speaking, I think this accurately captures how the different organizations and organizational structure that I find myself working within kind of falls under those three buckets somehow, some way. With the infrastructure bill, I think there's a lot of opportunity for outdoor recreation, especially as it relates to economic opportunities and equity. And we've already seen some of this even through the ARPA funding. The land and wildlife management, I think, is getting really interesting. We have a conservation initiative globally, something called 30 by 30. And our version of that in the United States is the America the Beautiful Challenge. And what this is tasking or challenging America to do is conserve 30% of our land and waters by 2030. So that's a real challenge. And the days of, large land conservation are really over. We have a very dissected landscape with land ownership. So what this infrastructure bill and the Inflation Reduction Act collectively, I think, do are put an emphasis on private landowner conservation. And these are really volunteer opportunities through things like the USDA Farm Bill and some other opportunities for private landowner conservation initiatives. This is everything from reducing hazardous fuels on the landscape to de-intensify wildfires on our landscape, as well as biodiversity initiatives and looking at those key biodiversity areas. So I think there's a lot of interesting opportunity there under that land and wildlife management bucket. Then with environmental regulation, I really feel that they're going to get the brunt of all of this development and the environmental review and the permitting, as well as making sure that we are keeping our land, air, and water clean and healthy for us to live within. A lot of people are looking at hiring, but I think one of the ways to really maximize efficiency is by looking at your operations, how you actually implement location technology to improve your permitting process. Everything from how you conduct work in the field, how you engage with your stakeholders, and how you move that information around inside your agencies. Dunsies.
Continue this conversation with the Ecobite podcast, available wherever you get your podcasts.